There exists a paradox at the heart of spiritual awakening that few speak about, yet many feel in the marrow of their being. The souls who have glimpsed the divine light, who have tasted the essence of truth, who have touched something beyond the illusion of the everyday world, these are the very souls who begin to vanish from society, not in dramatic fashion, not with pronouncements or farewells, but quietly, like mist evaporating under the morning sun. They withdraw into silence, and the world, busy with its noise and its endless pursuits, hardly notices their absence. But for those who are attuned, for those who are beginning their own awakening, this disappearance is neither random nor tragic. It is necessary, inevitable, and profoundly meaningful. Ibn Arabi, the great Andalusian mystic and metaphysician of the 12th and 13th centuries, understood this phenomenon with a clarity that still resonates across the centuries. He spoke of khalwa, the sacred solitude, the spiritual retreat in which the soul abandons everything worldly in order to dwell in the presence of the divine. This was not an act of cowardice or rejection, but rather a conscious choice to step away from the illusions that bind humanity in chains of forgetfulness. For Ibn Arabi, the one who enters khalwa is the one who knows himself, and the one who knows himself knows his Lord. In the state of seclusion, there is no object of contemplation except God, known through his most beautiful names, and the seeker becomes characterized by these divine attributes in both interior and exterior dimensions. The withdrawal of awakened souls is not escapism. It is the soul's natural survival mechanism when it can no longer tolerate the mass delusion that passes for ordinary life. When divine consciousness begins to expand within a person, when the heart starts to see through the veils of material existence, remaining immersed in unconscious habits and collective illusions becomes unbearable. It is not metaphorically painful. It is felt in the nerves, in the mind, in the very heart itself. The awakened soul feels the friction between what it has glimpsed and what the world insists is real, and this friction burns like fire. To continue participating in the charade feels like a betrayal of something sacred within, something that can no longer be ignored or suppressed. But why silence specifically? Why do these souls not simply change their circumstances while remaining engaged with the world? Why must they withdraw into the quiet, into the stillness that most people fear more than death itself? Ibn Arabi offers us a profound answer, one that cuts through centuries of misunderstanding about the nature of spiritual truth. He teaches that the heart does not speak, it only listens. The voice of the ego is restless, endless, always chattering, always insisting on its narratives and its needs. But the voice of God, the voice of ultimate reality, is heard only in silence. When the mind never stops, when thoughts run continuously like a river that has forgotten its source, we begin to confuse every inner noise with truth. We mistake the echo chamber of our conditioning for divine guidance, and in this confusion, we remain lost. Silence, then, is not the absence of sound. It is the space where the divine speaks without words. It is the sacred quiet where awareness listens, and existence itself becomes a whisper from God. This is not the silence of forgetting, but the silence of remembering, where the soul hears the heartbeat of creation and realizes it was never separate from the source. Every breath, every pause, every heartbeat carries the music of the unseen, and in that holy quiet, the world does not disappear, but unfolds in its true nature. The awakened soul learns to hear light, to feel silence, to perceive the soundless song of the divine that sustains the universe moment by moment. Ibn Arabi himself experienced this transformation early in his life. While still a beardless youth, he went into retreat and was granted a spiritual opening that amazed even the greatest minds of his time. During this retreat, Jesus appeared to him in a vision and instructed him to practice asceticism and self-denial. His first earthly master, Al-Uriani, advised him to shut the door, sever all ties, and take the divine alone as his companion, promising that God would speak to him without a veil. This course Ibn Arabi pursued until he succeeded, spending many periods throughout his life in retreat, immersed in the practice of khalwa. He discovered what so many awakened souls discover, that true prayer sometimes means saying nothing at all, that the transformation of the heart begins when it becomes a mirror of truth, polished through silence and solitude. The practice of khalwa is not simple or comfortable. It is full of danger and incomprehension. The rational mind is always at stake when one embarks on this inner journey, which is why there must be arduous preparation for both mind and body. Ibn Arabi emphasized 4 essential prerequisites of spiritual discipline: silence, seclusion, hunger, and vigilance. These are not merely physical practices but spiritual realities. Silence of the tongue becomes silence of the inner noise. Solitude from people becomes solitude from the false self. Fasting from food becomes fasting from the appetites of the ego, and wakefulness of the body becomes wakefulness of the soul. Each of these practices strips away another layer of illusion, another veil between the seeker and the truth. The challenge of Khalwa is that it requires forbidding the body from the pleasures and comforts that most people spend their entire lives pursuing. In a world that worships comfort, convenience, and constant stimulation, this seems like madness. But the awakened soul has tasted something that makes worldly pleasures seem hollow, like trying to satisfy thirst with salt water. The uncanniness of Khalwa is that in the extremity of loneliness, at its peak, one might attain oneness with God. The path leads through darkness and isolation to an intimacy that transcends all worldly connections. It is a paradox that can only be understood by walking it, not by theorizing about it from a safe distance. Ibn Arabi describes withdrawal from creation as a fundamental aspect of spiritual retreat. But he is careful to note that there is no absolute separation between states, not even ultimately between the human and the divine. The solitude he speaks of has 2 faces: the formal retreat, khalwa proper, where one physically withdraws from society, and solitude in the crowd, khalwat dar anjuman, where one maintains constant consciousness of God in every circumstance. The formal retreat represents practical solitude for the refreshment of self and senses, for spiritual strengthening. The model is the Prophet Muhammad himself, and the utility of solitude has been accepted for centuries as a standard devotional practice in Sufism. But solitude in the crowd becomes the face of the self going about daily life after the retreat. It preserves a disengagement from the world without disrupting the functions of society. The Quran identifies those who successfully practice this inner solitude as those whom neither business nor profit distracts from the recollection of God. The Prophet Muhammad himself had 2 sides, one facing his Creator and one facing creation. This is the goal of the awakened soul's withdrawal, not permanent escape, but temporary immersion in the divine presence that allows them to return to the world transformed, carrying the light they have touched. Ibn Arabi recounts that the Prophet Muhammad initially sought to flee from seeing people, finding himself oppressed and constricted in their presence. Had he gazed upon the face of God within them from the beginning, he would not have fled nor sought to be alone. But he remained in this state of retreat until God came to him suddenly, and after that transformation, he returned to creatures and stayed with them. This pattern, withdrawal, transformation, return, is the natural rhythm of the awakened soul. It is not abandonment, but preparation, not rejection, but purification, so that one can engage with the world from a place of truth rather than unconsciousness. The notion of estrangement that Ibn Arabi emphasizes does not mean isolation from people and the world in a bitter or permanent sense. Rather, it is a cambial seclusion that entails active participation in the affairs of society, with no hope of getting worldly gains from this immersion. Detachment enables the mystic to be entirely engrossed in the events, states, or stations happening to them without being consumed by them. It is a temporary abandonment of the world that causes the soul to drink from the water of wisdom until it becomes intoxicated with divine presence. Ibn Arabi's own journeys symbolized a field in which he practiced estrangement in hope of unification with the real. He never associated himself permanently with a place or even with a Sufi master in the conventional sense, but traveled everywhere, choosing the imaginary teacher Qadir as his guide. The more he traveled, the greater the detachment of his heart became, and through this movement he achieved a freeing from all forms of attachment. There is something the world fundamentally misunderstands about awakened souls who withdraw. Society tends to view their silence as weakness, their solitude as dysfunction, their disengagement as failure. But those who are themselves awakening recognize it for what it truly is, a necessary death and rebirth. The caterpillar does not become a butterfly by trying harder to be a better caterpillar. It must withdraw into the chrysalis, into a darkness where its entire form dissolves before it can emerge with wings. The awakened soul knows, even if they cannot articulate it, that they are in their chrysalis phase, and any attempt to remain engaged with their previous life would abort the transformation. Ibn Arabi teaches that this withdrawal is a form of restriction, a cell, but one built in such a way that it is created precisely to escape it, to free oneself from it. The paradox is essential to grasp. One enters confinement to discover liberation. The physical boundaries of khalwa, the small room, the limited food, the absence of social contact, these restrictions of the body create expansion in the soul. What seems like imprisonment to the external observer is experienced as boundless freedom by the one who has learned to navigate inner space. For in that inner space, when the noise of the world falls away, when the demands of society cease their clamor, the soul discovers dimensions of existence that were always there but impossible to perceive amid the constant distraction. The desolation that accompanies this withdrawal is not punishment, it is purification. Like fire burning away everything that is not gold, the loneliness reveals what the seeker has been using people for: validation, distraction, proof that they matter. When others are gone, the emptiness screams, not because the awakened soul needs those people, but because they have not yet learned to sit with themselves in the divine presence. Life is like cloudy water in a glass, and every distraction is another shake that keeps the water turbulent. Only stillness allows the water to clear. When stillness comes, sediment rises first. Old grief, buried regrets, unspoken resentments. This is why most people run, not from loneliness itself, but from what loneliness reveals about the unlived life, the unfelt feelings, the unexamined patterns. But after the sediment rises, it settles, and the water becomes clear. One can see through to the bottom, and that clarity is where the divine has been waiting all along. Not above the noise, but beneath it, in the depths that can only be accessed through stillness. Ibn Arabi discovered and taught that khalwa opens through sacred solitude, not chosen isolation or bitter withdrawal, but deliberate stillness in the presence of God. This is a crucial distinction that separates the awakened soul's withdrawal from mere antisocial behavior or psychological dysfunction. The awakened soul is not running away from the world. They are running towards something that the world cannot give them and actively prevents them from finding. There is an inner war happening inside every human being, one that Ibn Arabi understood with remarkable clarity. It is a war between the soul that remembers God and the soul that forgets God, between the true self and the false self, between what is eternal within us and what is merely temporal and conditioned. For most people, this war remains unconscious, fought in the shadows while they distract themselves with pursuits that ultimately leave them empty. But for the awakened soul, the war becomes conscious, and once conscious, neutrality is no longer possible. One must choose, and the choice to withdraw is the choice to fight this inner battle with full awareness, without the anesthesia of constant social engagement and worldly distraction. The beauty of this withdrawal, when understood through Ibn Arabi's metaphysics, is that it leads to the witnessing of oneness in the emptiness of the heart. The heart must be emptied before it can be filled with divine presence. As long as it is cluttered with the debris of worldly attachments, there is no room for the divine to enter. The practice of khalwa is fundamentally an emptying, a kenosis, a dying to the false self so that the true self can emerge. This true self is not separate from God, but is the place where the human and the divine meet, where the drop recognizes itself as the ocean. Ibn Arabi invites us to contemplate that our inability to understand the divine is a form of absence, but not the absence of God from us, rather our own absence from ourselves. We are so absent in our lives, so distracted and dissociated, that we lose our cognition and feeling of our sameness and closeness to the divine. The divine is not absent, we are. The awakened soul withdraws in order to become present, to return to themselves, to remember what they have always been, but have forgotten in the noise and chaos of collective unconsciousness. This is why Ibn Arabi describes the journey as a dive into the sea of the essence, to see what will seem strange and is not revealed to beholders, to uncover secrets hazily veiled by the spirits of the divine names. The journey to union that Ibn Arabi describes through his nomadic spirituality renders the seeker more tolerant, more accepting of the other, more adaptable to various conditions. This is counterintuitive to those who view withdrawal as rejection of diversity or engagement. But the truth is the opposite. By withdrawing from the unconscious patterns of society, by finding their center in the divine rather than in social validation, the awakened soul becomes capable of genuine compassion and acceptance. They are no longer threatened by difference because they are no longer constructing their identity in opposition to others. They have found a ground of being that transcends all divisions, and from that ground, they can meet all beings with recognition rather than judgment. The mystical journey that Ibn Arabi outlines involves dimensions that are both frightening and glorious. The Sheikh al-Akbar describes the state of being of the person on this journey with profound insight, pointing out that it is only possible for those who are willing to surrender everything they think they know, everything they cling to for security, everything that comprises the false self. This surrender is not passive resignation, but active engagement with the process of transformation. It requires courage that most people never develop because they are never placed in circumstances that demand it. When the awakened soul withdraws, they are often in circumstances that appear mundane to external observers, but are actually crucibles of transformation. The small room of Khalwa becomes the universe. The silence becomes a symphony of divine presences. The hunger of the body becomes a feast for the soul. Every restriction on the physical plane corresponds to an expansion on the spiritual plane, and through this alchemical process, the lead of the ego is transmuted into the gold of divine realization. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that seclusion, according to the people of God, is the chief of the four disciplines: silence, seclusion, hunger, and vigilance. Hunger includes vigilance, and seclusion includes silence, so in a sense, seclusion encompasses the others. But what is true seclusion? Ibn Arabi tells us in his monumental work, The Openings Revealed in Makkah, that none is in seclusion except one who knows himself, and the one who knows himself knows his Lord. This is the key that unlocks the mystery of withdrawal. It is not about physical location, but about inner realization. One can be in a cell and not be in true seclusion if the heart is still chasing after worldly concerns. Conversely, one can be in the marketplace and be in profound seclusion if the heart is established in the remembrance of God. The one in true seclusion has no object of contemplation except God, known through his most beautiful names. They become characterized by these divine attributes in both interior and exterior. This is the goal and the fruit of Khalwa. Not to become disconnected from the world, but to become so connected to the divine that one sees the divine face in everything. The withdrawal is not the end, but the means to this transformation of perception. The awakened soul withdraws in order to return, but they return as someone different, someone who has died to their false identity and been reborn in truth. The sacred sound of silence that Ibn Arabi reveals is not empty. In a world of endless noise, the soul longs for something deeper, a silence that does not echo emptiness, but presence. True silence is not the absence of sound, but the space where the divine speaks without words. In this reflection, one travels beyond the surface of stillness into that sacred quiet where awareness listens and existence itself becomes a whisper from God. This is not the silence of forgetting, but the silence of remembering, where the soul hears the heartbeat of creation and realizes it was never separate. Every breath, every pause, every heartbeat carries the music of the unseen. In that holy quiet, the world does not disappear. It unfolds in its deepest truth. One learns to hear light, to feel silence, to see the soundless song of the divine within all things. Ibn Arabi's hidden teaching calls us to stop speaking long enough to hear the word that never ends, the soundless vibration that sustains the universe in every moment. Silence is not absence. It is divine presence itself. The heart hears what ears cannot perceive. Stillness is God's first language, and every breath carries divine remembrance. True listening begins precisely when words end. This is why awakened souls withdraw into silence, because they have heard something in the depths of their being that cannot be heard amid the clamor of ordinary life. They have touched something that makes all worldly pursuits seem like distractions from what truly matters. They are not fleeing the world out of fear or hatred, but seeking the source of the world out of love and longing. Their withdrawal is an act of devotion, not rejection. It is a return to the origin, to the ground of being, to the wellspring from which all existence flows. The most spiritually aware, gentle, and awakened souls withdraw not because they have given up on humanity, but because they understand that their greatest gift to humanity is their own transformation. They cannot give what they do not have, and they cannot have true peace, true wisdom, true compassion, until they have sat in the silence long enough for the divine presence to work its alchemy upon them. This is not selfishness, it is spiritual responsibility of the highest order. The awakened soul knows that one person who has genuinely touched the divine can illuminate the darkness more effectively than 1,000 who merely talk about light while remaining in shadows. The spiritual opening that Ibn Arabi experienced during his retreats was not an escape from responsibility, but preparation for tremendous responsibility. After his periods of khalwa, he engaged with the world more deeply, more authentically, more powerfully than he ever could have, without that foundation in divine presence. He wrote some of the most profound spiritual texts in human history, texts that continue to guide seekers centuries after his death. He did not withdraw permanently but rhythmically, understanding that the soul needs both engagement and retreat, both action and contemplation, both speaking and silence. This rhythm is essential to grasp for those who are themselves feeling the call to withdraw. The withdrawal is not meant to be permanent for most people. It is a temporary immersion in the divine presence that transforms one's relationship with the world. After the retreat, after the silence, after the inner work has been done, the awakened soul returns, but they return with greater wisdom, clarity, and light. They return not as who they were, but as who they have become through the process of dissolution and rebirth. They return able to be in the world but not of it, able to engage without being consumed, able to love without attachment, able to serve without losing themselves. The loneliness of transformation is real and should not be minimized. When the awakened soul withdraws, they often lose relationships that were based on their false self. Friends who knew them in their unconscious state may not recognize or accept the person who emerges from the chrysalis. Family members may resist the change, preferring the predictable person they knew to the authentic person who has emerged. This is one of the costs of awakening, and Ibn Arabi does not pretend otherwise. The journey is full of danger, difficulty, and misunderstanding. But for those who are called to it, the cost of not answering the call is even greater. To remain in mass delusion when one has glimpsed truth is to experience a pain that is worse than the pain of transformation. It is a betrayal of the soul itself, a slow death of the spirit while the body still walks around. The awakened soul withdraws because they have no choice, not in the sense of being compelled by external force, but in the sense that every fiber of their being is oriented toward truth, and remaining in illusion becomes impossible. They are like salmon swimming upstream, driven by an instinct deeper than thought, answering a call older than words. Ibn Arabi's teaching on khalwa reveals that spiritual retreat is a form of restriction that is created precisely so that one can escape it and free oneself from all limitations. The physical boundaries create conditions for spiritual boundlessness. The temporary isolation from people creates capacity for permanent communion with the divine. The silencing of the outer voice creates space for the inner voice to finally be heard. Every limitation imposed in khalwa serves liberation, every death serves resurrection, every emptying serves filling. The gift of solitude that the awakened soul discovers is the gift of inner listening. In the constant noise of society, the still small voice of the divine cannot be heard. It is drowned out by advertisements, opinions, judgments, expectations, demands, and the endless chatter of the conditioned mind. But in solitude, in silence, in the vast emptiness of khalwa, that voice can finally reach the conscious awareness of the seeker. And once heard, it changes everything. One can never again pretend that this voice does not exist, never again be satisfied with the counterfeits that the world offers in place of genuine divine presence. The awakened soul withdraws to cultivate muraqabah, the spiritual practice that allows one to achieve a softened heart, an awakened soul, and a mind free from illusion. This contemplation of reality extends further than any philosophy or psychology. It is direct experience rather than theoretical knowledge, immediate recognition rather than intellectual understanding. One does not learn about God in khalwa. one encounters God. The difference between learning about water and being immersed in water is the difference between reading about khalwa and practicing it. Ibn Arabi emphasizes that khalwa allows us to share in the divine reality, and this sharing goes to the core of reality, potentially even to the essence. Intimacy with the divine signifies closeness to the point of no separation. Given this sameness and closeness, our inability to understand the divine is revealed as our own absence from ourselves, not the absence of God from us. We are so absent in our lives, so distracted by the surface of things, that we lose our cognition and feeling of our fundamental unity with the source of all being. The divine is not absent. We are. The awakened soul withdraws to become present, to return from exile, to remember what has been forgotten in the amnesia of ordinary consciousness. The secrets that Ibn Arabi speaks of, veiled by the spirits of the divine names, are revealed in the depths of khalwa. These are not intellectual secrets that can be grasped by the thinking mind, but experiential mysteries that can only be known through direct spiritual perception. When one dives into the sea of the essence, as Ibn Arabi describes it, one encounters what seems strange to those who remain on the shore, what is not revealed to ordinary beholders. This is the treasure that the awakened soul seeks in their withdrawal. Not escape from life, but discovery of what life truly is beneath the layers of conditioning and illusion. The transformation that occurs in genuine khalwa is total. It is not a modification of the personality, but a dissolution of the false self and a revelation of the true self. The ego does not become better. It is recognized as a construct, a fiction, a veil over the face of reality. The awakened soul does not improve their character through moral effort, but discovers a dimension of being that transcends the entire structure of ego and personality. They find what has always been present but hidden, what they have always been but forgotten. This is why awakened souls withdraw from the world in silence, not because they hate the world, but because they love truth more. Not because they fear people, but because they have heard a call that requires their full attention. Not because they are weak, but because they are strong enough to face the terrifying vulnerability of genuine spiritual openness. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they have learned that the deepest truths cannot be spoken, only lived. Not because they want to abandon society, but because they know that the greatest service they can offer is to become a clear vessel for divine presence. The withdrawal is not the story, it is a chapter in the story. The silence is not the message, it is the space in which the message is received. The solitude is not the goal, it is the path to a union that transcends all separation. Ibn Arabi shows us that khalwa is not about running away, but about diving deep. Not about closing down, but about opening up. Not about rejecting life, but about discovering what life truly is when all the veils are lifted. And so the awakened souls withdraw, one by one, quietly, without fanfare or explanation. They step back from the noise, the rush, the endless demands of a world that has forgotten its source. They enter the silence, the stillness, the sacred solitude that most people avoid at all costs. And there, in that place that seems like absence to the world, they find the presence that the world cannot give and cannot take away. They discover who they truly are beneath all the masks. They remember what they came here to do. They touch the divine reality that has been calling them all along. And when they return, if they return, when they return, they bring something with them that the world desperately needs but cannot name. The fragrance of truth, the light of genuine presence, the peace that surpasses understanding. They return as witnesses to another dimension of existence, as proof that there is more to life than the surface most people never look beneath. They return not to convince or convert, but simply to be, and their being itself becomes an invitation to others who are beginning to hear the same call. This is the mystery and the majesty of withdrawal. It serves not only the one who withdraws, but the entire world. Every soul that genuinely awakens creates a ripple in the collective consciousness. Every person who touches the divine becomes a doorway through which divine light can enter the world. Every retreat into sacred silence weakens the spell of mass delusion and strengthens the field of truth. The awakened soul withdraws not for themselves alone, but for all beings, though they may not understand this until much later. Ibn Arabi's teaching on khalwa is ultimately a teaching of love love for the divine, love for truth, love for the authentic self, and paradoxically, love for the world that one temporarily leaves. The withdrawal is an act of love because it is a choice to align with what is highest and deepest, rather than settling for what is comfortable and familiar. It is love that drives the awakened soul into the desert, into the cave, into the silence. It is love that sustains them through the dark night when everything they thought they knew dissolves. And it is love that brings them back, transformed, to offer themselves in service to a world that may not understand them, but desperately needs what they have become. The silence of the awakened soul is not empty, but full of presence, full of listening, full of divine communion. Their withdrawal is not absence, but preparation for a presence more authentic than anything they could offer from their unconscious state. Their solitude is not loneliness, but the discovery of a companionship more intimate than any human relationship. They withdraw from the world to find what the world is made of. They enter silence to hear the voice beneath all voices. They embrace solitude to discover the unity that connects all beings. This is the path that Ibn Arabi illuminates for us across the centuries, the path of sacred withdrawal that leads not away from life, but into its very heart. The path of silence that reveals the divine word spoken in every moment. The path of solitude that discovers the ultimate companionship. The path of khalwa that transforms the seeker into a mirror of divine attributes. The path of the awakened soul who withdraws from the world not in rejection but in preparation, not in fear but in love, not in weakness but in the strength that comes from touching something eternal. And for those who are feeling this call themselves, who sense the stirring of awakening within their own souls, Ibn Arabi's teaching offers both validation and guidance. Your withdrawal is not pathology, but wisdom. Your silence is not emptiness, but fullness. Your solitude is not isolation, but connection to the source. Trust the process, even when it is terrifying. Enter the khalwa, whether physical or interior, and allow the divine presence to work its transformative magic. Know that you are following a path walked by prophets and saints, mystics and sages throughout the ages. Know that your withdrawal serves not only your own awakening, but the awakening of all beings. Know that the silence you enter is sacred, the solitude you embrace is holy, and the transformation you undergo is necessary for the world to evolve beyond its current state of collective unconsciousness. The awakened souls withdraw because they must, because they are called, because something within them has recognized that there is no other way. They withdraw into silence because that is where the divine speaks. They withdraw into solitude because that is where union is found. And they withdraw with the trust, sometimes uncertain and trembling but nevertheless real, that this death will lead to resurrection, this darkness will lead to light, this retreat will prepare them for a return that will change everything. This is the wisdom of Ibn Arabi, the mystery of khalwa, and the secret of why awakened souls withdraw from the world in silence.